Picture this. You step outside your cave on a winter morning 25,000 years ago. The temperature, -40 degrees. Cold enough to freeze your breath before it leaves your mouth. Cold enough to kill you in minutes if you're not prepared. But here's what will blow your mind. This isn't a scene of desperate survival like your history teacher described. Inside that cave, a grandmother teaches her granddaughter to weave. Men craft tomorrow's hunting tools with the precision of modern engineers. Women stitch waterproof clothing that would impress today's outdoor gear companies. The smell of roasting mammoth fills the air, not a last meal, but tonight's feast. Welcome to the last ice age, the most brutal cold snap in human history. And here's the crazy part that nobody talks about. Our ancestors didn't just survive it, they absolutely conquered it. While saber-toothed cats froze to death in their dens, while even cold-adapted Neanderthals vanished forever, regular humans like us did something that still amazes scientists today. We thrived. Think about those numbers for a second. Ice sheets 2 miles thick crushing everything from Norway to New York. Ocean levels dropped 400 feet. You could walk from Alaska to Russia. Temperatures in Europe averaged 30 degrees colder than today. The Sahara Desert was green and filled with lakes. The Amazon rainforest? Just grassland. This wasn't Earth having a bad winter. This was an alien planet. But in caves across Europe and Asia, archaeologists find something incredible. Not the bones of starving victims, but evidence of complex, thriving communities. In the Czech Republic, they discovered ceramic art created when survival supposedly took every waking moment. In Russia, houses built from hundreds of mammoth bones with engineering that challenges modern architects. That caveman dragging his knuckles through the snow. Pure Hollywood fiction. These were the world's first clothing engineers, artists who painted masterpieces by firelight. Traders who moved precious materials thousands of miles across frozen wastelands. They survived an apocalypse that lasted longer than all of recorded human history. And they didn't just survive. They lived better than many people today. In Russia, archaeologists found an old man buried 34,000 years ago. His grave contained how you see both the past and the future of human survival. Hit that subscribe button right now, because this story gets more mind-blowing with every chapter. And definitely let me know in the comments. Do you think you could survive even one day in the Ice Age with just stone tools? Coming up next, we're going to witness the moment when the entire world changed in just decades, not centuries. A climate disaster so severe, it makes modern global warming look gradual. Yet somehow, our ancestors turned this catastrophe into their greatest opportunity. Chapter 2. When the world turned to ice. Imagine waking up tomorrow and your grandfather's stories about warm summers suddenly becoming myths. The fruit trees your parents planted last year, dead, gone forever. The animals you've hunted your whole life, vanished as if they never existed. This actually happened. 12,900 years ago, just when things were getting good. The world was finally warming up. Ice sheets were melting, forests were creeping north. Humans were spreading into new lands, following the warmth like flowers following the sun. People were getting comfortable. Then winter returned with a vengeance that defies belief. Scientists call it the Younger Dryas, but our ancestors called it the end of everything they knew. In Greenland, temperatures plummeted 30 degrees, not over thousands of years, but in decades. Some ice core evidence suggests it happened in less than a human lifetime. Picture New York suddenly having Alaska's climate. That's what they faced. But here's the part that will give you goosebumps. We have witnesses to this disaster. In a cave in Syria, archaeologists found layers of ancient pollen that tell an incredible story. Layer by layer, you can see paradise transforming into frozen desert. Wild wheat disappearing, trees dying. In one generation, A land of plenty became a wasteland. So what did these desperate humans do? They invented agriculture. Faced with starvation, they started growing the few plants that could survive. The Ice Age didn't just test humanity, it transformed us from wanderers into farmers. Crisis became catalyst. But what caused this frozen apocalypse? The leading theory sounds like a disaster movie. As everywhere. The next they're gone like someone erased them from history. But here's what proves human resilience. New cultures immediately emerged. More diverse, more adaptable, more innovative. The crisis that killed the mammoths gave birth to dozens of new ways of being human. The Younger Dryas teaches us something terrifying and amazing. Climate change isn't gradual. It's a switch, not a dial. When it flips fast. Our ancestors survived temperature swings that make modern climate change look subtle. They didn't just endure, they evolved. Each crisis forced innovation. Each catastrophe created opportunity. Do you realize what this means for us today? As we face our own climate challenges, we're carrying the genes of people who survived the impossible. If you're feeling inspired by human resilience, smash that like button. And here's a question that might keep you up tonight. What would you do if the climate changed completely in your lifetime? Let me know in the comments. Coming up, we're about to discover the tiny tool that determined who lived and who froze. 3 inches of carved bone that opened entire continents and made modern humans unstoppable. Chapter 3. The Miracle Needle. In a shelter near the Black Sea, 45,000 years ago, firelight flickers across a woman's concentrated face. In her weathered hands, she holds humanity's future. A sliver of bird bone, no bigger than a pencil. But this isn't just any bone. At one end, smoothed with hours of patient work, sits a tiny hole no wider than a strand of hair. The eye of the world's first needle. This 3-inch piece of carved bone would determine who lived and who froze. Before this moment, humans wrapped themselves in rough animal hides. Fine for mild weather, deadly in deep cold. Winds sliced through gaps. Snow crept into every opening. Body heat escaped like steam from a broken pipe. In -40 weather, you had maybe an hour before hypothermia killed you. Watch what happens next. The woman threads sinew so fine, it's almost invisible through that tiny eye. With practiced movements, she pierces 2 pieces of reindeer hide, pulling them together in a seam so tight, ultrafine ones from rabbit bones for decorative work. In Wyoming, archaeologists found needle fragments from at least 13 different animals. Foxes, hares, birds, even the extinct American cheetah. This wasn't crude survival. This was prehistoric high fashion. The clothing these needles produced was beyond belief. In Russia, a man buried 28,000 years ago wore garments decorated with 3,000 hand-carved ivory beads. Each bead took an hour to make. His shirt alone represented a full year of work. When archaeologists reconstructed his outfit from the bead positions, they found fur leggings, a fitted tunic, a cape, boots, and a hat, form-fitted, layered, and styled. Modern cold-weather clothing follows identical principles. The Inuit parka, considered the pinnacle of Arctic clothing design, uses the same layering system our ancestors invented 40,000 years ago. The only difference? We use synthetic materials. They used bird skins, rabbit fur, and wolf pelts. The needle changed absolutely everything. Suddenly, humans could tailor clothes to their bodies, eliminating heat-stealing gaps. They could create multiple thin layers instead of one bulky hide. They could repair garments, making them last years instead of weeks. Most importantly, they could make clothes for children, ensuring the next generation survived. But wait, recent studies from Wyoming reveal another game changer: decoration. Those ancient needles weren't just creating functional seams. They were adding fur trim, creating patterns, maybe even embroidering clan symbols. In a world where everyone wore fur, your clothing became your identity. Think about this. One tool, 3 inches long, made from dinner scraps, yet it opened continents, saved civilizations, and made us who we are. Without it, you wouldn't exist. Are you amazed by human ingenuity? Hit that like button and let me know in the comments, what modern invention do you think will be as important as the needle? Your answer might surprise you. Coming up next, we're entering structures so incredible that modern architects study them for design inspiration. Cities built from the bones of giants, engineered by people who never saw a math textbook. 16 feet across. Foundation made of mammoth skulls, each weighing 200 pounds, carefully interlocked with jawbones like giant puzzle pieces. Walls built from shoulder blades and hip bones, stacked like enormous shingles. Long bones forming arcing supports that would make a Roman engineer jealous. Tusks driven deep into frozen ground to anchor the entire structure. This required mathematics that would impress MIT graduates. Dr. Olga Soffer calculated the weight. Each house used 20 tons of bone. That's 40,000 pounds of material that had to be collected, transported, and precisely placed in a world without wheels, pulleys, or pack animals. But here's what makes archaeologists' minds explode. The bones show weathering patterns. These weren't fresh kills. Ancient humans were scavenging skeletal remains from natural death sites, sometimes traveling miles to collect specific bones for specific purposes. Skulls for foundations, shoulder blades for walls, thigh bones for rafters. This wasn't desperation building. This was urban planning. The construction techniques defy belief. At Dolní Věstonice, builders created interlocking joints between bones like prehistoric Lincoln logs. Tusks were heated and bent into curves, a technique requiring precise temperature control that we didn't think was possible without modern tools. Some bones show evidence of drilling and rope lashing. These builders understood load distribution, wind resistance, and thermal dynamics better than most modern contractors. Inside, the sophistication continues. Clear activity zones emerge from the archaeological evidence. Sleeping areas lined with Arctic fox fur. Workspaces positioned near natural light sources. Storage pits dug into permafrost that worked like prehistoric refrigerators. At Mezin, archaeologists found a painted mammoth skull that, when struck, resonates at different pitches. The world's first drum, built right into the architecture. But why bones instead of wood? Sure, trees were scarce on the Ice Age steppes, but it was community architecture, requiring project management skills. The bones had to be sorted, prepared, and assembled in precise sequence. One mistake, and tons of material could come crashing down, potentially killing the builders. These structures lasted centuries. But some sites, evidence shows repeated rebuilding on the same spots, suggesting inherited property or sacred spaces passed down through generations. Imagine architectural traditions maintained for hundreds of years, with each family adding their own modifications while preserving the essential design. The symbolism can't be ignored. You're literally living inside the beast that symbolized the Ice Age, sleeping within its ribs, entering through its jaws. This wasn't just practical shelter. It was a statement of conquest. We defeated the mammoth so completely that we dwell within its bones. Modern architects study these structures for insights into sustainable design. No steel, no concrete, no power tools. Yet they created buildings that survived 15,000 years of weather, earthquakes, and human interference. In a frozen wasteland, with stone tools and bare hands, our ancestors built monuments from death itself. And they called them home. Does this change how you think about prehistoric intelligence? Drop a comment and let me know what impresses you most about these bone cities. And if this is blowing your mind, definitely hit that subscribe button, because we're just getting started. Coming up, the master craftsman who transformed rocks into precision instruments that modern manufacturers struggle to replicate. Chapter 5. Masters of Fire and Stone. She sits cross-legged, a leather pad across her lap, examining a chunk of flint like a diamond cutter studying a precious stone. This isn't random rock bashing. This is engineering at the molecular level. She sees what others cannot. The hidden pathways of force through crystalline structures. The microscopic flaws that determine where stone will break. The perfect angle that transforms raw mineral into life-saving masterpiece. With her antler hammer, she strikes once. The flint splits exactly where raw material for specialized tools. The diversity staggers modern archaeologists. Burins for engraving so precise they could carve microscopic lines in ivory. End scrapers for hide preparation, with edges worn smooth from processing thousands of animal pelts. Backed bladelets, tiny geometric shapes that formed composite tools, borers for precision drilling, notched tools for straightening arrow shafts. But here's what changes everything. Hafting. 35,000 years ago, someone figured out how to attach stone to wood. Simple concept, world-changing implications. Suddenly tools had leverage, they had reach, they had replaceability. Break your spear point, pop in a new one. Different task, different attachment. The multi-tool was born. At Pansavant in France, archaeologists uncovered an Ice Age workshop frozen in time. 15,000 years ago, someone sat in this exact spot making tools. The debris patterns reveal their technique. Controlled pressure flaking, using antler tips to remove flakes thinner than paper. The precision equals modern surgical instruments. Regional styles emerged like prehistoric patents. Salutrian points from France and Spain, so thin that light passes through them. Crafted using heat treatment and pressure flaking techniques that represent art, masquerading as tools. Russian sites yield different innovations. Large unifacial tools, perfect for heavy butchering work. Each region's toolkit adapted to local resources and specific survival needs. The real genius lay in composite construction. At Measurich, archaeologists found grooved bones that puzzled researchers for years. Then someone noticed. The grooves fit microliths perfectly. These were handles holding rows of tiny stone inserts. Prehistoric razors with replaceable blades. When one dulled, pop it out and slide in a fresh one. They invented modular technology 20,000 years before we thought modules were possible. Children learned by doing. Sites yield thousands of practice pieces, failed attempts at replicating adult tools. The learning curve was steep. Modern experimental archaeologists need months to achieve basic competence. Atom thin. The control was absolute. They could create serrated edges with teeth smaller than rice grains, notches precise enough to hold sinew threads, points so sharp they sliced paper after sitting in the ground for 20,000 years. But tools were more than function. They were identity. French Magdalenian points differ from German ones. Spanish styles are distinct from Russian designs. Like accents carved in stone, these differences proclaimed tribal origin and individual skill. In a world of small bands scattered across vast distances, your tools announced who you were before you said a word. Modern humans with metal tools struggle to replicate these techniques. Our ancestors did it with rocks, bones, and infinite patience. Each strike required understanding physics. Each tool demanded hours of focused work. Each innovation built on generations of accumulated knowledge. They didn't just chip stones randomly. They transformed matter itself, one calculated blow at a time. The toolkit of the Ice Age wasn't primitive. It was precision incarnate. Are you starting to see why these people weren't primitive cave dwellers? Let me know in the comments what surprises you most about Ice Age technology. And if you're loving these revelations, hit that like button to help more people discover this incredible story. Coming up next, the hunt that fed civilizations and the weapons that could take down giants. Chapter 6. The Greatest Hunt. The Mammoth charges. 9 tons of muscle and fury thundering across the frozen steppes. In Hollywood movies, fur-clad hunters scatter as massive tusks sweep through the air like deadly scythes. Forget everything the movies taught you about mammoth hunting. It's complete fantasy. Try throwing a spear hard enough to penetrate 4 inches of tough hide, a layer of fat thicker than a mattress, and then reach vital organs buried deep inside a creature the size of a school bus. Physics laughs at your puny human arms. The reality was pure genius. UC Berkeley archaeologist Scott Byram just shattered decades of assumptions. Those famous Clovis points, the Ferrari of Stone Age weapons, weren't mounted on throwing spears at all. They were pikes, planted in the ground, angled precisely, waiting. The energy you generate with a human was exquisite. Clovis points weren't just sharp rocks knocked off bigger rocks. They were hafted with split wooden shafts, bound with sinew, and reinforced with pine pitch. The bases were ground smooth to prevent splitting on impact. Some show fracture patterns consistent with massive force, the kind only a charging megafauna could generate. But Clovis was just the beginning of human weapons innovation. At Schöningen in Germany, archaeologists uncovered 400,000-year-old wooden spears that rewrote the textbooks. These weren't crude pointed sticks whittled by firelight. They were engineered like modern javelins, thickest and heaviest at the front third for maximum penetration, carefully tapered for aerodynamics, perfectly balanced for throwing. Olympic athletes tested replicas. The results? Accurate throws exceeding 70 meters with enough force to take down large game. The innovation cascade never stopped. Spear throwers, the atlatl, appeared 30,000 years ago. This simple lever multiplied throwing force by 400%. Suddenly, hunters could launch projectiles at 150 kilometers per hour with pinpoint accuracy. Modern tests show these could penetrate elephant hide at 40 meters. By 20,000 years ago, the bow appears in the archaeological record. Not the simple bent stick of children's cartoons, but compound constructions using horn, sinew, and specially selected wood, engineered for maximum power and accuracy. African hunters still using traditional bows can put an arrow through a buffalo at 50 paces. Ice Age versions were likely more powerful. But here's what recent archaeology revealed that changes everything. Specialized ammunition. Different points for different prey, engineered like modern bullets. Broad, thin points for reindeer, designed to maximize bleeding and ensure quick kills. Thick, narrow points for mammoth, designed to break ribs and penetrate deep into vital organs. Barbed points for fish that prevent escape once struck. Blunt points for birds that stun without destroying valuable meat. At Laramie in Wyoming, microscopic analysis shows points were even specialized by season. Sharper edges for winter hunting when animal hides were thickest and toughest. The most ingenious weapon wasn't a weapon at all. The persistence. They hunted downwind. They knew mammoths protected calves fiercely, so they created diversions. They knew horses spooked at certain sounds, so they invented noisemakers that triggered panic in exactly the right directions. At Star Car in Britain, 11,000 years ago, hunters wore deer skull headdresses, not for ritual purposes, for camouflage. Red deer accept other deer approaching much closer than obvious humans. Those extra meters meant the difference between success and starvation. Every innovation built on the last in an accelerating cascade of improvements. Hafting led to composite tools. Composite tools enabled specialized functions. Specialization drove efficiency. Efficiency meant surplus. Surplus enabled culture and art and music and everything that makes us human. We didn't conquer the Ice Age with brute force or superior numbers. We did it with physics, psychology, and patience. The mammoth never stood a chance. Can you imagine the skill and teamwork this required? Drop a comment and tell me. Could you trust your life to a strategy that required perfect timing and coordination? And if you're amazed by human ingenuity, smash that like button. Coming up, the secret diet that kept our ancestors healthier than most people today. And it wasn't just meat. Chapter 7. Survival Foods You Never Knew. In an archaeological storage room, Dr. Amanda Henry holds up a microscopic slide containing something that rewrites Ice Age history. It's not a stone tool or ancient bone fragment. It's 30,000-year-old dental plaque, and it's absolutely full of plants. Starch grains, she says, adjusting the microscope focus. Lots of them. This Neanderthal was eating his vegetables. For decades, we've imagined Ice Age humans as pure carnivores, surviving exclusively on mammoth steaks and reindeer haunches. The truth? They were eating salads. Well, Ice Age salads. Cattail roots, hawthorn berries, wild carrots, and dozens of other plants we're only beginning to identify. The evidence comes from the most unlikely source: fossilized plaque on ancient teeth. This biological garbage turns out to be an incredible time capsule. Using new extraction techniques, researchers can identify casual food preparation. This was systematic processing that required deep botanical knowledge. But why were plants so crucial? The answer lies in human biology. Our brains consume 20% of our daily calories, twice that of other primates. Meat provides protein and fat for building muscles and storing energy, but the brain runs primarily on glucose. And the most efficient source of glucose? Starch from plants. Dr. Karen Hardy from the University of Barcelona made another startling discovery. Some of these plant starches show clear evidence of cooking. They've been gelatinized by controlled heat. This means Ice Age humans weren't just gathering wild plants. They were transforming them through sophisticated cooking techniques, making nutrients more available and digestible. The timing is significant. Around 30,000 years ago, as the last glacial maximum approached and temperatures crashed, a new technology exploded across Europe and Asia. Ground stone tools. Not for hunting, not for weapons, but specifically for processing plants. It's a technological revolution we've completely ignored, explains archaeologist Dr. Emanuela Cristiani. Grinding technology appears simultaneously from Spain to Russia. That suggests desperate innovation, driven by necessity. Consider what this means for survival strategy. As the world grew colder and large game became scarcer, humans didn't just suffer and die. They innovated. They turned to food sources that required processing. Tough roots, hard seeds, fibrous tubers, foods that other predators couldn't access or digest. At Shanidar Cave in Iraq, 50,000-year-old Neanderthal remains tell an even more sophisticated story. The dental calculus contains not just food plants, but medicinal ones. Chamomile and yarrow, plants with no nutritional value that taste bitter and unpleasant. These are medicines. Our ancestors were practicing prehistoric pharmacy. The plant knowledge required staggers the imagination. Which roots become edible after proper processing? Which seeds turn toxic when stored too long? Which berries can be dried for winter storage? Where do you dig for nutritious tubers under 3 feet of snow? This wasn't casual knowledge passed down through bedtime stories. It was survival information. As critical as no summer, plant foods could comprise up to 60% of the diet. Even in winter, processed plant foods provided crucial calories when hunting failed. We've been telling the wrong story about Ice Age survival. It wasn't survived on mammoth meat alone. It was survived on botanical knowledge so deep and complex that we're only beginning to understand it 30,000 years later. Your ancestors weren't just skilled hunters. They were master botanists, chemists, and nutritionists who understood their environment at a molecular level. And that plant wisdom may have been the real difference between human extinction and human expansion across the globe. This completely changes the Ice Age story, doesn't it? What surprises you most about prehistoric plant knowledge? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're learning things that totally shock you, hit that like button to help spread these amazing discoveries. Coming up next, the most important survival technology that had nothing to do with tools, weapons, or shelters. It was about the human heart. Chapter 8. Love in the Time of Ice. In a cave in what is now France, 28,000 years ago, a young woman makes the most important decision in human history. She's looking at a stranger, a man from a band that lives 3 valleys away. Different clothing style, different accent, different way of making tools. Everyone she's ever known warns her that outsiders bring danger. Stick with your own people. Trust only blood relatives. Play it safe. But she makes a different choice. She chooses love across tribal boundaries. That decision didn't just change her life. It saved our entire species. Here's what nobody tells you about Ice Age survival. The deadliest threat wasn't saber-toothed cats or starvation or freezing temperatures. It was genetics. Picture this nightmare scenario. You're part of a small band of 25 to 30 people, scattered across a landscape the size of modern Europe. The nearest other human group is weeks of dangerous travel away. For generations, your people marry within the group to maintain tribal bonds and avoid conflict with strangers. It works for a while. Then the babies start being born with problems. Genetic defects, reduced immunity, lower intelligence, shorter lifespans, inbreeding depression. It's a death sentence for small populations, but some tokens of love that connected isolated populations across vast distances. Dr. Clive Gamble from Royal Holloway University puts it perfectly. Love wasn't a luxury during the Ice Age, it was a survival technology. Genetic analysis of modern Europeans reveals the proof. We carry DNA markers from dozens of different Ice Age populations. Our ancestors weren't staying isolated in small tribal groups. They were actively mixing, blending, creating genetic diversity that made survival possible. But this required something revolutionary, overcoming the deepest human instinct to fear outsiders. Think about how terrifying this was. You're sending your daughter to live with strangers who might speak a different language, worship different spirits, follow different customs. One mistake could mean war between groups. Everyone's survival hangs in the balance, yet they did it anyway, because love proves stronger than fear. The evidence shows up in burial practices. At Sungir in Russia, a man and 2 children were buried together 34,000 years ago with identical grave goods, despite having different genetic backgrounds. This wasn't a biological family, it was a chosen family, created through marriage alliances. Ice Age love networks created the world's first international relations. Peace treaties sealed with wedding ceremonies. Trade agreements guaranteed by romantic partnerships. Diplomatic immunity granted to lovers crossing territorial boundaries. But here's the most incredible part. They made it romantic. At Grimaldi Cave in Italy, archaeologists found jewelry that tells a love story spanning thousands of years. Shell beads crafted in identical patterns, but using shells from different coastlines. Someone was maintaining a romantic relationship across hundreds of miles of dangerous territory, exchanging gifts that required months of travel to deliver. The famous Venus figurines, found across Ice Age Europe. New research suggests they weren't fertility goddesses or prehistoric pornography. They were engagement tokens, carved portraits that young men carried to remember their lovers during long hunting expeditions or dangerous journeys to distant tribes. Love letters carved in ivory, designed to last forever. These relationships required incredible trust and communication skills. How do you court someone who speaks a different dialect? How do you negotiate marriage customs? Psychological breakthrough was enormous. These people transformed tribal xenophobia into curiosity about outsiders. Fear of the different became attraction to the exotic. Suspicion of strangers became excitement about meeting someone new. They literally evolved the capacity to fall in love across cultural boundaries. Modern research shows this saved us from extinction multiple times. During the worst climate disasters, when local populations crashed, love networks provided genetic rescue. New partners brought fresh DNA that restored health and fertility to struggling communities. Love wasn't just survival insurance, it was the ultimate backup system. But perhaps the most beautiful part is what it reveals about Ice Age values. In a world where survival consumed every waking moment, they still made room for romance. They still believed that love was worth risking everything for. They chose genetic diversity over tribal purity. They chose hope over fear. They chose love over safety. And those choices echo in every cross-cultural marriage today. Every relationship that bridges differences. Every love that connects distant worlds. Does this change how you think about prehistoric relationships? Share this video with someone you love and let me know in the comments. What do you think took more courage? Hunting mammoths or falling in love with a stranger? Coming up next, the caves that weren't churches but libraries, where art became the ultimate survival manual. Chapter 9. The Art of Staying Alive. Deep in Lascaux Cave, by the flickering light of animal fat lamps, someone climbs a wooden scaffold 17,000 years ago. In their hands, brushes made from mammoth hair. On the cave wall above, they begin to paint, not random doodles or primitive stick figures. These are technical manuals disguised as masterpieces. Welcome to the world's first libraries, where art wasn't decoration, it was life insurance. For over a century, archaeologists argued about cave art, religious ceremonies, shamanistic rituals, prehistoric entertainment. They missed the obvious answer staring them in the face. These caves were survival schools, and the art was the curriculum. Showing anatomy, migration routes, herd behaviors. The mammoth paintings at Rouffignac? Engineering blueprints that reveal structural weaknesses and optimal spear placement angles. But here's what makes your jaw drop: the incredible accuracy. Modern zoologists studying these 30,000-year-old paintings find anatomical details so precise they could be used in veterinary textbooks. Muscle structures drawn with surgical accuracy. Seasonal variations in animal appearance documented with scientific precision. These weren't artists working from imagination. These were technical illustrators creating survival manuals that had to be perfect because people's lives depended on them. At Chauvet Cave, the paintings tell an even more complex story. Different animal species appear in specific combinations that match actual ecological relationships: predator-prey dynamics, seasonal movements, territory boundaries. It's an ecological textbook painted on stone walls that would last 30,000 years. But art wasn't just about hunting information. At Cueva de las Manos in Argentina, hundreds of handprints create something like a prehistoric Facebook. Different hand positions and decorative patterns identify individuals, families, and tribal affiliations. In a world without written language, these visual signatures let people leave messages for others. We were here. This territory is claimed. Safe passage to friendly visitors. The technical innovation required was staggering, creating pigments that would last millennia from mineral oxides, plant dyes, and animal blood, developing brushes and blowpipes for different artistic techniques, engineering scaffolding systems to reach high cave walls in complete darkness. Most incredibly, they invented artificial lighting that wouldn't damage the artwork or create dangerous smoke accumulation in enclosed spaces. Recent discoveries at Lascaux revealed the sophistication of their lighting systems. Carved stone lamps designed to burn animal fat without creating soot. Reflector systems using polished minerals to direct light precisely where needed. Ventilation engineering that prevented carbon monoxide poisoning. They were creating art studios in underground chambers 20,000 years before humans invented cities. But perhaps the most profound discovery is what the art reveals about Ice Age psychology, remembered forever. The handprint galleries found throughout Ice Age caves serve another crucial function. They're prehistoric signatures that say, "I was here. I survived. I'm part of this continuing story." In a world where individual death was common and group extinction was always possible, these handprints became promises to the future. Humans were here. We learned. We adapted. We endured. Modern cognitive scientists studying these caves realize our ancestors invented the first virtual reality systems. Deep underground, surrounded by images of animals and landscapes, people could mentally rehearse hunting strategies, practice identifying seasonal changes, and share complex knowledge without risking actual encounters with dangerous prey. The caves were simulators, the art was software, and the education they provided meant the difference between group survival and extinction. Your ancestors didn't just create the world's first art. They created the world's first educational technology that combined beauty, information, and inspiration in ways that ensured crucial knowledge would survive, even if individual teachers died. Every museum, every textbook, every educational video you've ever seen traces its lineage back to these painted caves, where art became the ultimate survival tool. This completely transforms how we think about prehistoric intelligence, doesn't it? What amazes you most about Ice Age art serving as survival manuals? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and hit that like button if this is changing your perspective on human creativity. Coming up in our final chapter, when the ice finally began to melt and everything our ancestors had learned faced the ultimate test. Chapter 10. when the ice began to melt. 15,000 years ago, something unprecedented happens. After 100,000 years of Ice Age cycles, after surviving the worst freeze in human memory, after building an entire civilization adapted to eternal winter, the world begins to change. The Great Melt has begun. But this isn't the gentle warming we imagine from children's books about seasons changing. This is a catastrophic transformation that happens faster than human societies can adapt. The cold, but surviving success. For the first time in human history, populations aren't controlled by harsh winters, predator attacks, or resource scarcity. People start living longer, having more children, building permanent settlements, and running out of space. The Younger Dryas taught our ancestors that climate change could happen in decades. Now they're experiencing the reverse. Rapid warming that destroys the stable Ice Age world they've mastered for millennia. In the archaeological record, we see desperate innovation. Communities that had perfected mammoth hunting suddenly have to learn fishing as their prey goes extinct. Groups that built sophisticated bone houses must figure out wood construction as forests replace tundra. The most successful Ice Age technologies become obsolete practically overnight. But here's what proves human adaptability once again. They don't just survive the transition, they revolutionize human civilization. In the Fertile Crescent, warming temperatures and changing rainfall patterns create new opportunities for plant cultivation. The botanical knowledge that kept our ancestors alive during Ice Age winters becomes the foundation for agriculture. Women who had spent generations processing wild seeds and tubers become the world's first farmers. The grinding stones that made toxic plants edible during climate disasters become the tools that launch the agricultural revolution. At Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, hunter-gatherer societies build the world's first monumental architecture. Massive stone circles that require coordinating hundreds of workers, impossible during Ice Age resource scarcity, but achievable in the new world of warming abundance. The crisis triggers the greatest cultural explosion in human history. But abundance creates new problems our ancestors never faced. For 300,000 years, small mobile bands avoided conflict through simple solutions. If resources ran low, move somewhere else. If groups couldn't get along, separate. In the post-Ice Age world, for the first time, there's nowhere else to go. Archaeological evidence shows increasing warfare as human populations grow and compete for the best agricultural land. The cooperative sharing systems that ensured Ice Age survival become inadequate for managing larger, more complex society anxieties. We gained civilization but lost community. We gained variety but lost nutrition. We gained comfort but lost resilience. The genetic analysis reveals a sobering truth. Ice Age humans were taller, stronger, healthier, and had larger brains than their agricultural descendants. The struggle that forged our species also created physical and mental capabilities that we're only now beginning to appreciate. Modern paleo diets attempt to recreate Ice Age nutrition. CrossFit training mimics Ice Age movement patterns. Mindfulness meditation tries to restore Ice Age mental clarity. We're rediscovering Ice Age wisdom because we've never fully adapted to the post-Ice Age world. But here's the incredible part. We're facing another climate transition right now. Global temperatures are changing faster than at any time since the Ice Age ended. Sea levels are rising, weather patterns are shifting, ecosystems are transforming. The genes that survived the Ice Age live in every cell of your body. The neural pathways that solved impossible survival challenges still fire in your brain. The cooperative instincts that built mammoth bone houses still drive human civilization. As we face our own climate crisis, perhaps the Ice Age's greatest gift isn't what we gained or lost, but what we learned about human adaptability. We survived when saber-toothed cats couldn't. We thrived when Neanderthals vanished. We built civilizations from mammoth bones and painted libraries in limestone caves. We turned the deadliest climate disaster in human memory into humanity's finest hour. The question isn't whether we'll adapt to whatever comes next. The question is what we'll become in the process. Your ancestors conquered ice that killed everything else on Earth. They turned frozen wastelands into thriving communities. They made tools from stones and shelters from bones, and art from cave walls that lasted 30,000 years. You carry their genes. You inherited their brains. You possess their infinite capacity for adaptation, innovation, and survival. The Ice Age never really ended. It just moved into your DNA, waiting for the next impossible challenge. And when that challenge comes, you'll be ready. What do you think is the most important